people with a real historic sense of the game in England know that City have been serial failures and serial boom makers. When it looked like City were in prime position to do anything, they would always somehow fail, and United always managed to one up them. City won the title, United won the Champions League or the European Cup. City won the cup, United won the FA Cup. Every time they've won up City, but over the last 6 years, City have won 3 Premiership titles, and I see no reason why they won't make it a 4th. And the reason being is that their squad is just so dominant. I mean, the only cause of concern I have for them, they have Aguero and Jesus up front. I think Aguero is just a machine. He's a 20-25 goal a year striker. If he goes down injured, Jesus doesn't have that same kind of prolific nature, and I don't think City have the great depth in the forward department. But that being said, their midfield is probably the best in the world.
But Nick, we should probably point out that the one big signing they've made during the summer has been Riyad Mahrez from Leicester as a real attacking option. And you're talking about what happens if one of their big two goes down. But interesting tactically, it's possible that Mahrez could play on the right and then they could move Raheem Sterling up to the center. That gives them that option, and maybe, just maybe, that is why they bought Mahrez, to give them that extra cover if they need it.
Well, yeah, I mean, if the Pep Guardiola, the genius of Pep Guardiola is the fact that he will have his team play 2, 3, possibly even 4 different formations in one game. And he has such intelligent players, and he's such a good quality coach that he's able to drill in the strategy that he wants his players to compete at. And I think that's why City have been so great last year, was that no one could adjust to what Pep Guardiola was doing on the sidelines. And by the time they figured out that, all of a sudden they're playing 5 up front, well, they were already 3 goals to the good. And City play such progressive football. They're always on the front foot, always looking to score goals. The only time City have got behind is to your lot, Liverpool.
Yeah.
And that was due to the pressing nature of the Liverpool game. So I think anybody that plays City, you can't sit back, because they will just pick you off, slice you up, and destroy you. You have to go at them, and you have to be a very brave manager to do that. So, looking at their squad, it's defensively, Otamendi may be a donkey for Argentina. He's great for City. I really like Laporte, who came in. Mendes back from fitness. Stones has grown into the role. And then, as we said, the midfield is just, it's a who's of the best player in the world. Sterling, De Bruyne, Mahrez, Sane, David Silva, Bernardo Silva. Take your poison.
Yeah. Yeah, but Bernardo Silva, he was exceptional in the Community Shield as well. If you watch that game, there were very few highlights of it. Honestly, I thought he was incredible.
He can't get a game.
And he can't get a game. You're absolutely right. Nick, I have 2 question marks about City coming into this season. Number one is Guardiola. I think there's only been 1 year that Guardiola has not repeated as champion when he's won it. But the second thing is, I think the Champions League is their real target this year. Look, they ran smack into Liverpool last year in the Champions League, and you, as you mentioned perfectly, they had trouble dealing with Klopp's high-tempo, heavy metal football style of game. I don't see anything about Man City that's going to change that. However, the likelihood of them running into Liverpool in the latter stages of the Champions League again are possibly slimmer than they were last time. And with Barcelona and Madrid being, I don't think they're nearly as strong as they were last year. It's going to be fascinating to see, is Guardiola going to really be focusing in on the Champions League, seeing with the 2 big Spanish clubs in a bit of a rebuild mode, is this the time for him to make that pounce on that Champions League trophy?
Well, I think, the expectations at Manchester City are not only the Premier League, but the Champions League. Look, City have always, Nick, been in the shadow of United. And United will always lord over City the fact that they won the treble back in '99. I honestly think that is Guardiola's, it's his remit for this season. And take this into account, Nick. Guardiola hasn't won the Champions League in 6 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time for a top line manager to go without, club football's biggest prize. So I do agree with you on that point that the Champions League is a huge priority. But I also think winning the Premier League again is a huge priority.
Yeah.
I would put them really at joint wants and hopes for City this year.
Yeah, Nick, the last comment I'm going to make about this before we have to go to break here is, we talk a lot about Liverpool because obviously they're the team I've supported since a lad. We talk about Manchester City. But the two things these teams have in common are they are teams with managers that are adult human beings, that have experience, that have a system by which they buy players to apply to their system. And they have ownership that backs the manager and allows the manager to bring in the players and run the club as they see fit. I think if there's any lesson to take out of City's incredible success and Liverpool's re-emergence as a force in England is the fact that ownership, when you have quality ownership who are willing to back their manager, great things happen, Nick.
Yeah, interesting point. I look at the ownership group that City have inherited, and I would say that they're pretty hands off. Yep. I think this is a discussion. There's a political discussion in here as well. If we really want to take it that far with City, with the Middle Eastern money, and I think it's good optics for the Sheikh to be related to something as great and positive as City, and certainly what they're doing with the regeneration of Moss Side in the city of Manchester. I mean, they're all really positive things. We don't really talk about human rights when we talk about Manchester City, but if we wanted to, so that's why I think that the Sheikh really keeps himself behind the scenes and lets the football people run it. And
But Nick, hold on. I'm going to cut you off here because we've got 1 minute, and the point that you've made is correct on the one hand, but the Sheikh is no business fool. He knows that you get the best people to run your business for you, and you oversee it from the top. I think that's why he's not been in the day-to-day. That's just his business savvy, Nick.
Well, I mean, I would love to look at the books, right? How much money have they invested? How much money have they got out of it? Is Manchester City a money earner for Sheikh Mansour, or is it a vanity project? Riddle me that.
That's probably a vanity project, Nick. I think at this level, for most of these clubs, other than clubs that are owned by sort of wily business people who put 90% of their net asset value into purchasing the club, for most of them, it is just that, a vanity project. All right, Nick, we're going to wrap up City. You and I then, we're thinking City's going to finish top again. We'll be right back after this. We're going to look at Manchester United. Is there going to be another second place finish for United? Stay tuned. We'll tell you.